Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This week taking a look at the Trijicon Accupower 4-16 variable mag optic. Now, as I'm sure you already know, Trijicon's a household name. I consider them to be in the top 5 of optics manufacturers. They make really good, really rugged optics. What would keep you away from Trijicon versus another brand usually comes down to preference, because the reliability, the durability is definitely going to be there. Obviously, price becomes a factor, but when I was looking at this Accupower line, which is new for this year, I wanted to see what Trijicon was doing differently necessarily than some of these other companies, and what they had to offer that maybe wasn't already there on the market. Now, when I did the review on the 1-4, I put it on an AR, really good for intermediate ranges. But when it came to the 4-16, I wanted to stretch its legs. I wanted to see how the glass held up and the glass functioned at longer range shooting. So I went ahead and threw it on my PWS 308. Now, I learned on the MOA reticle, which they do offer. This particular rifle, the one I reviewed, is the mil square reticle, which I found myself liking a lot. When I first made the transition from MOA to mil, I was using a TMR reticle, which I found very, very helpful. When I first got this reticle, and I'll put it up so you guys can see what I'm talking about, it was a little strange to me because I'd never used a reticle quite like this before, but I found myself liking a lot, and I found once I got used to it, it was very intuitive to use. Now, if you don't want mil, because of this particular optic, the adjustments are 0.10 mil. The optic is mil graded, or I should say the reticle is mil graded. They still offer an MOA reticle as well as a duplex reticle if you don't need such a high degree of precision. My personal feeling is if they're all going to cost the same, go with the one that's going to give you the highest degree of precision in the system that you use, be that MOA or mil. Now, the Accupower line in general, graduated optics, mil reticle for the most part, but they're not the standard dual illumination that Trijicon's known for, like you see with the Accupoints. With the Accupower, it's an illuminated LED, which is a necessity for some people and a really nice addition or option for others. I don't necessarily consider it an option. I would actually like to see Trijicon offer the Accupower scope without the LED, because I believe that would bring the price down significantly. Some people think LED's got to be on there just in case. Me personally, depending on what your occupation, your lifestyle, your shooting habits are, it's not something you necessarily need. And if you can take it off the scope and maybe get into a Trijicon for a little bit less money, that'd definitely be a huge benefit. But as a long-range optics platform, I didn't see any significant problems with this. The only issue I really identified that I didn't really care for was the eye relief is very, very unforgiving, which is unfortunate. But that being said, if you're using it on a precision rifle platform and you're using like this LMT DMR stock, it's going to put my head at the same position, same distance, focal distance every single time. So once I get my eye relief, my length of pole set up, I don't really have to worry about it again. Now, on a less specific rifle, something with just a general stock, or maybe you're using on an adjustable stock AR with just your standard collapsible stock, I could see it becoming a potential issue, especially as you increase that degree of magnification. Now, the turret controls, just like the 1-4 and the other Accupower lines, are covered, little caps. Don't like that. I understand why they did it. It probably saves you a little bit of money on the scope, to be perfectly honest, because your exposed turret controls are usually more durable. Durability increases price. I'm not saying these aren't durable. I'm saying they're saving a little bit of money on production, which means you save a little bit of money on cost by having these captured turrets. Now, if you want to dial in, you either have to leave the caps off or you have to remove the cap, make your adjustment, put the cap back on. Not really fast, obviously. If you're going to hold over using the mil-square reticle, it's not really an issue. The parallax adjustment knob is exposed, you're good to go. LED knob controls are up here, also good to go. So unless you're really hell-bent on dialing in your shots, and some of us are, the captured knobs isn't that huge of a deal, but I would like to see them offer an option, maybe for a little bit more money, because let's be honest, those exposed turrets are more rugged, so they're going to cost more. I'd like to see that as an option for people who are like, okay, I really like the optic, but the deal breaker for me is those captured turrets. Durability, repeatability. One of the obvious ways that we test the durability and consistency of an optic is through recoil. Semi-automatic rifles have more recoil pulse issues than I would compare to a bolt-action gun. So using it on a semi-automatic 308 platform, the gun is, or the optic rather, is going to experience a little bit more, or significantly more, depending on the weapon and the round, jarring, recoil, vibration, things of that nature, than a bolt gun, which has that one straight back recoil pulse, good to go. I did multiple drop tests on this. Again, I wanted to keep it realistic, but I wanted to kind of accelerate the lifeline. So I just did nothing but 12-foot drops off the balcony back there. I did 3 of them. The third one actually broke the buffer tube on the rifle. But did the rifle maintain consistent zero? Because that's obviously the biggest deal. We don't want the optic to break, obviously, and it didn't. But did it maintain an acceptable zero after being dropped multiple times? Well, let's check out a group at 100 meters before the drop testing and a group at 100 meters after 3 drops. As you can see from the first 100-meter group, and then the second 100-meter group after 3 drops. The drops were from 12, 14, 16 feet, right around in that neighborhood. I didn't measure it exactly, but it is 1 story plus my height, plus the height, as you saw, that I dropped the rifle from. Now, is that telling? Well, hopefully with your optic, it never suffers a drop like that. And hopefully it never suffers 3 drops like that in its lifetime. But it's important to know that a rifle is going to maintain an acceptable or a precisely consistent zero after suffering that kind of shock and vibration. Is it necessary to drop test your rifle? Absolutely. Do you have to drop it from 12, 14, 16 feet? You don't have to. Obviously, you know, things are expensive, and if they break, no matter what we are trying to get out of dropping them, if they break, they break. Warranties being what they are, optics are expensive. But it is really good depending on what you're going to use your optics for, occupationally speaking. If you're just bench rest shooting, probably not a need. The rifle's going to get dropped anyway. At some point in its life, it's going to fall over, but it may fall just from waist height. For law enforcement, military, put that rifle on there, or put the optic on the rifle, give it a few drop tests just to see if it maintains a consistent zero in a practice environment. I don't care how cheap, how inexpensive, or how expensive the optic is. If it doesn't maintain an acceptable or a precise zero after a drop, you should probably take it off the rifle and get something else. The glass is really clean. It's one thing I liked a lot about it. Even shooting from the prone, and I'm in Georgia, it's summer right now. 90-degree humidity, ain't raining, sun's out, 97 degrees. I'm not picking up a whole lot of mirage. Now mirage is there, but glass definitely aids in being able to see clearly. And in some of the more inexpensive scopes, mirage can become a serious issue for clarity of being able to see what you want to see. Now obviously shooting through mirage and seeing through mirage, two totally different things. You know, if the mirage gets really bad, go ahead and try to elevate yourself, get above that mirage if you can. But the clarity, consistency of the glass is really nice, and obviously the built-in foxtail that you have to vary your magnification is super helpful. A lot of scopes come with more of a recessed one, or it's just barely a little knob, and if you want a more gross motor skill, if you will, adjustment knob, you got to buy an aftermarket part. The adjustment knob on the Accupower 4-16 is, I consider, just right, kind of like that in that Goldilocks category. It doesn't stick out too much to where it's going to drag against the body or catch on gear, but it's not so recessed that I have to consciously pinch and pull, and it makes adjustment harder. There's some scopes out there that until you break them in, so to speak, that variable mag adjustment is really kind of a pain in the ass. Whereas on the Trijicon Accupower, it's easy from first round to, you know, lifespan. Now the illuminated reticle, multiple power settings, which is good for varied lighting conditions. During the entire review process, I didn't actually use the illuminated reticle for shooting. I did play with it a few times, different lighting conditions, different times of the day, different weather conditions, just to see how it affected my ability to see the reticle against my target, backdrop, things of that nature. The good thing about it is, even on the highest power setting, what I consider the obnoxious setting, it doesn't bloom so bad that you cannot still use the reticle to actually estimate distance, which to me is a huge deal. It doesn't light the entire reticle, as you'll see, it only lights part of it, but that illumination can become an issue, and I've had that issue on other optics where even on a low setting in a certain situation, I'm getting enough bloom that it makes it harder, not impossible, but harder for me to actually estimate distance with the reticle itself. Now, if you're going to use a rangefinder and you're never going to actually use the reticle for its intended purpose, it's probably not going to be an issue for you. But it's something I'd like to see a scope perform to a certain degree where I don't have to worry about, even on a low power setting or a high power setting, depending on what I need the illuminated reticle for. If it's going to impede my ability to use the reticle for what it's intended for, then I'm probably not going to use it. So then I ask the question like, well, why is it even on the optic? I would, again, like to see the Accupower offered without it. I don't think it's a necessity for certain types of shooters, but the fact that it's there, if you're going to use it, it does not impede your ability to see the reticle, which is obviously the most important part. So, final verdict on the 4-16 Accupower. I like it a lot. There are things I don't like about it. I've already talked about. I wish it was offered with an exposed turret, and I wish there was an option for those who'd want it where you didn't have to have the illumination feature, because I think that'd bring the cost down a little bit. But durability, consistency is excellent. Everything you need is there. If you need a precision optic and one that's going to be able to hold up to the rigors of whatever you use your rifle for, be it occupation or hunting or hiking or whatever you get into, I think the Accupower is definitely a good choice. It's significantly less expensive than some of the other comparable optics out there. A little bit more expensive than those you might find at a gun show table or something like that, but you really do get what you pay for. I've never felt with Trijicon that I was paying for the name. I always felt like I was paying for quality. So it's definitely an optic that I support. I definitely stand behind it. I didn't find any significant issues other than going back to those turrets that would dissuade me personally from buying it. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train Quarter. It's a rental.